James Craig appeared, at least from the outside, to be a man who had everything: a respected dentist, a proud father of 6, and a husband who seemed devoted to his family. In a promotional video for his Colorado dental practice, he smiled warmly at the camera and said his treatment philosophy began with sincerely listening to his patients, understanding who they were, what they needed, and what they hoped to achieve. That he said he loved creating an environment where people were surprised at how comfortable they felt. But behind that easy charm, a much darker reality was slowly taking shape. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Famous Crime Cases, where we uncover stories that challenge what you think you know about humanity. In March of 2023, the same man who spoke so earnestly about care and compassion would be accused, and eventually convicted, of committing one of the most shocking murders in recent Colorado history, a killing that unfolded not in a moment of rage, but over days and weeks of chilling calculation. The victim was his wife, Angela Craig, a 43-year-old mother of 6 who had stood by him through years of personal and financial turmoil, never realizing that the man she loved had begun to see her as an obstacle to be removed. The story of James and Angela Craig begins like many others: college sweethearts building a family together, chasing stability and success. Friends described Angela as warm, intelligent, and devoted to her children. She was active in her community, deeply faithful, and the kind of person who seemed to always be helping someone else. James was charming and ambitious, but also restless. He liked to take risks: financial ones, professional ones, and eventually, moral ones. Those risks would consume. In early 2023, the couple's lives appeared stable enough on the surface. They lived in Aurora, Colorado, where James ran a dental practice he had built over the years, but the practice wasn't doing well. Behind the polished smiles and friendly website videos, the business was sinking. James Craig had filed for bankruptcy in 2021 and was struggling again. He was, according to his business partner, a risk taker, always chasing the next idea, the next chance to pull himself out of debt. But the debts only deepened, and so did the cracks in his marriage. Friends later told police that the marriage had long been tumultuous. There were moments of reconciliation, but also periods of growing distance, betrayal, and mistrust. Angela confided in her sister that years earlier, James had drugged her during a suicide attempt of his own, a disturbing event she tried to forgive but never forgot. By early 2023, that old sense of unease had returned. She had told her family that something wasn't right. In February 2023, James attended a dental conference in Las Vegas. There, he met another dentist, a Texas woman named Karen Kane. She was going through a divorce, and James, who was already active on the dating website Seeking.com, struck up a romantic relationship with her. He promised her a future together. He told her he was trapped in a loveless marriage, that he was miserable, and that he was planning to start a new life. At the same time, he was giving her expensive gifts and even purchased her a plane ticket to visit him in Colorado. While his wife was home raising their children, James Craig was dreaming of escape and searching for ways to make that escape permanent. Around this time, James began using a computer in one of his dental exam rooms to make chilling internet searches. Investigators later discovered that he used an email account under the name Jim and Waffles to search for phrases like "how to make murder look like a heart attack," "undetectable poisons," and "how many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human." He watched YouTube videos about poison and read articles about how to kill without leaving a trace. He wasn't browsing out of curiosity, he was planning. In late February, he ordered arsenic online. The order was shipped directly to the home he shared with Angela and their children. He continued researching tetrahydrozoline, a chemical found in eye drop solutions, and potassium cyanide, all substances that, in high doses, are lethal. The searches became more frequent, more specific, and more disturbing. On March 5th, Angela returned home from a family trip to Utah. She'd spent time with her sister, attending a genealogy conference, something they both loved. When she came back, she seemed fine, but within 24 hours, her body began to fail. On the morning of March 6th, James Craig made his wife a protein shake, something they often did for each other as part of their workout routine. Angela drank it and went about her morning, but soon after, she began feeling dizzy and disoriented. She texted her husband, saying, "My stomach feels fine, but my head feels funny and dizzy. Very strange." James Craig missed his staff meeting at work that morning, telling his employees his wife wasn't feeling well. By the afternoon, he took her to the hospital. Doctors performed scans and blood tests but couldn't find a cause. She was released, confused but stable. That same evening, James returned to his dental office after hours. He told his office manager he wanted to be alone, and she left him there, sitting in the dark, working on a computer in one of the exam rooms. Later that night, he texted her to let her know a personal package would be arriving soon, and to please not open it. On March 8th, James ordered potassium cyanide from a scientific supplier. When asked for a reason for the purchase, he claimed he was a surgeon conducting craniofacial reconstruction research. He hoped, he said, to publish his findings for the National Institutes of Health. It was a lie. He wasn't doing research. He was preparing to kill again. Angela's condition worsened. She complained of dizziness, nausea, and fainting. On March 9th, she collapsed at home, and her children found her unconscious on the floor. James rushed her to the hospital, where she was admitted for observation. Her symptoms confused doctors. They didn't match any known illness. Her husband, meanwhile, texted another woman, "Just for the record, I will never drug you." As Angela lay in a hospital bed, hooked to IVs and heart monitors, James Craig's web of deceit began to unravel. He told colleagues she was suffering from an infection. He told her family she'd be fine. But in his office, a package arrived, one that an unsuspecting employee opened. Inside was a silver foil bag labeled potassium cyanide. When she saw the biohazard sticker, she looked it up online and froze. The symptoms of cyanide poisoning matched everything Angela had been experiencing. She immediately reported it to another dentist in the office, Dr. Ryan Redfern, who happened to be James Craig's business partner and longtime friend. Redfern and his wife Michelle, a nursing professor, went straight to the hospital. They found Angela weak, pale, and struggling to speak. Ryan pulled a nurse aside and told her he suspected poisoning, that his business partner had ordered cyanide for no legitimate reason. The hospital immediately contacted authorities. Within hours, police began quietly investigating. James Craig, however, seemed unconcerned. He texted Ryan Redfern a desperate message, accusing him of making things worse. "You will do more damage than good to my family by continuing to insert yourself into this," he wrote. "If there was ever any love in your heart for me, please don't make this any worse by talking to any officers." It was a plea that sounded less like a friend and more like a man realizing his carefully constructed plan was falling apart. Angela was released from the hospital on March 14th. She returned home still weak, but happy to be with her family. That evening, security footage from the Craig's kitchen showed James making another protein shake for her, stirring carefully, watching closely as she drank. Within hours, Angela began to feel dizzy again. The next morning, March 15th, she texted her husband, "I feel drugged." James replied, "Given our history, I know that must be triggering. Just for the record, I didn't drug you." By late morning, she was rushed to the hospital for the third time that month, this time barely conscious. Her brother accompanied her, as James arrived later. Within hours, Angela suffered a seizure. Doctors fought to stabilize her, but her body was shutting down. Blood tests revealed something terrifying: lethal levels of cyanide, arsenic. There was no longer any mystery. Angela Craig had been poisoned. When her sister arrived, James told her he didn't want an autopsy performed if Angela didn't survive. He said that if doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong while she was alive, he didn't want them poking her after she was dead. To investigators, that request was another red flag. To Angela's family, it was unthinkable. Angela Craig was declared brain dead on March 15th and officially pronounced dead on March 18th, 2023. She was 43 years old. The autopsy later confirmed that she had been killed by acute cyanide and tetrahydrozoline poisoning, with subacute arsenic exposure listed as a contributing condition. Her death wasn't an accident. It was the result of a carefully planned murder. Hours after Angela was taken off life support, police arrested James Craig. Inside his office and home, investigators found overwhelming evidence: his online searches, the orders for poison, his secret email account, and messages to other women while his wife lay dying. He had been planning to start a new life with his mistress, even buying her a plane ticket to visit him in Denver while his wife was still in the hospital. As detectives pieced together the timeline, the true extent of his deceit came to light. He had maintained 3 separate relationships on Seeking.com in the months leading up to the murder, giving money and gifts to women he met online. One woman testified that he had bought her daughter a car. Another said he'd sent her thousands of dollars via Venmo.to each. He presented himself as a caring man trapped in an unhappy marriage, a story that became a convenient justification for murder. But the case didn't end with his arrest. Incredibly, as James Craig awaited trial in jail, prosecutors accused him of plotting again, this time to kill from behind bars. He allegedly tried to hire a fellow inmate to murder several people connected to his case, including one of the Aurora detectives who had investigated him. The plot was discovered, and new charges of solicitation to commit first-degree murder were added. His own defense attorney, Harvey Steinberg, withdrew from the case after, citing professional rules that allowed him to quit when a client insists on taking actions the lawyer finds criminal or repugnant. The judge paused proceedings until Craig could find new representation. His trial, delayed multiple times, finally began in 2024. Inside the courtroom, prosecutors painted a portrait of a man driven by ego, greed, and lust. They showed jurors the search histories, the text messages, the purchases, each one a deliberate step toward killing Angela. They read the messages where Craig joked that if it weren't his wife, her illness would be a fun puzzle to try to work out. They showed footage of him comforting hospital staff, pretending to be a worried husband, even as the poison coursed through her body. It was a performance, and for a while it worked. But the evidence was undeniable. Toxicology reports showed that Angela had been poisoned multiple times, each dose pushing her closer to death. The timeline of deliveries, text messages, and computer searches aligned perfectly. When one poison didn't kill her fast enough, he tried another. When doctors couldn't find a cause, he saw opportunity. And while his wife was dying, he was arranging a flight for his lover. In court, the prosecution described his actions as a heinous, complex, and calculated murder. The jurors agreed. After a trial that lasted nearly 2 weeks, they returned a guilty verdict. James Craig was convicted of first-degree murder for killing his wife, Angela. He now faces the rest of his life behind bars. In the months following the conviction, the Craig family has been left shattered. 6 children now grow up without their mother, and effectively without their father. Angela's relatives described her as the center of the family, a woman of faith and strength whose kindness was taken advantage of. They said she had spent years believing that love could fix what was broken, never realizing that the person she trusted most was plotting her death. For many who followed the case, the tragedy of Angela Craig's death is not just in the method or the motive, but in its quiet familiarity, a story of manipulation, secrecy, and betrayal that unfolded behind the walls of a seemingly ordinary home. It is a reminder that evil doesn't always look like a monster in the dark. Sometimes, it smiles from across the breakfast table. James Craig once said he loved creating an environment where people were surprised at how comfortable they felt. That he did the same thing in his marriage, creating a facade of comfort and trust that concealed control, deceit, and ultimately murder. His downfall wasn't sudden. It was built over time, choice by choice, lie by lie. That he searched, he planned, he poisoned, and then he pretended that he thought he was smarter than everyone else, that he could design the perfect undetectable murder. But in the end, the very details he believed would hide his crime are what exposed it. The emails, the receipts, the toxicology reports, all told the same story. Angela Craig's death is a haunting example of how carefully disguised cruelty can exist behind a polished smile, a reminder that trust can be weaponized, and love can be used as camouflage for destruction. Her final words, "I feel drugged," were a desperate attempt to make sense of something she couldn't yet believe. Those words now stand as the moment the truth began to surface. The moment her body told the story her husband was trying so hard to erase. James Craig will likely spend the rest of his life in prison. But for Angela's family, the sentence can never be long enough. They live with the knowledge that the man who vowed to love her, cherish her, and protect her, planned her death while she slept beside him, and that knowledge will never fade. The case of James and Angela Craig stands as one of the most chilling examples of calculated domestic homicide in recent years, a story of deception, greed, and misplaced trust. The husband who poisoned his wife's protein shakes, who disguised his research as curiosity, his purchases as professional, and his lies as love. A man who believed he could control every outcome, until the evidence spoke louder than his charm. Angela Craig's story is not only about betrayal and loss, but also about justice. Justice fought for by friends who refused to stay silent, by doctors who questioned the impossible, and by investigators who followed the digital trail of a man who thought he could outsmart them all. It's a story that reminds us of the strength of those who speak up, and the cost of those who don't. In the end, a smiling video of James Craig still floats somewhere on the internet. The one where he says his philosophy begins with listening and caring. It's a cruel echo of what Angela once believed. Because behind that smile was not empathy, but calculation. Behind that promise to care was a plan to kill. Angela Craig's life ended far too soon, but her story continues to echo as a warning about the masks people wear, and the dangers of love turned lethal. It is a tragedy carved in trust, poisoned by deceit, and sealed by one man's decision to value his desires above a human life. And though James Craig's final chapter will unfold inside a prison cell, the damage he caused, to his children, his community, and to the woman who believed in him, will linger far longer than any sentence a court could impose. Because some betrayals are so deep, justice can only ever be partial. And some monsters, as Angela Craig's story shows, don't need to hide in the dark, they live among us smiling. If you found the story meaningful, consider subscribing to Famous Crime Cases for more real-life investigation and human stories.